If you're putting in the miles but still seeing little progress and you're constantly feeling drained, you're not alone. The missing piece is probably your refueling. On October 8th from 12 to 1 p.m. Central, I invite you to join Between the Miles, Strategic Refueling for Endurance Athletes. In this online masterclass, I will show you how to fuel smarter outside of your workouts so you can accelerate recovery, shake off that lingering fatigue, and finally maximize your performance gains without adding stress to your already busy life. I'm sharing practical strategies for setting macronutrient targets and fueling on rest days. You'll also see real-life athlete case studies and discover meal and snack ideas you can implement immediately. Registration is only $25, and if you can't make it live, no worries. It's recorded, and you'll get lifetime access to the replay. Head to the link in the show notes to get registered today, and let's get you fueling in a way that truly supports the training you love. I'm Alex Larson, dietitian, Ironman finisher, and host of Endurance Eats, the podcast where we break down the science of endurance nutrition and turn it into clear, practical nutrition advice to revolutionize how you think about fueling your body. So grab a seat, or keep moving if you're out training, and let's get started. Welcome back to Endurance Eats, the podcast where we break down performance nutrition into real-life strategies you can actually use. Today, I'm joined again by my dietitian teammates, Hannah and Mary. We're diving into one of the hottest topics in the fitness and endurance world right now, protein. Everyone's talking about it, and we're answering questions straight from my Instagram athlete audience. We'll unpack the science, share our own experiences, and give you tangible tips you can use to hit your protein goals without overthinking it. Here we go. We are back. Hannah and Mary are here, and we are going to talk about a very, popular hot topic. I feel like there's this obsession online with protein. So I guess my first question, ladies, because we have a lot of questions to get to because I did poll my Instagram audience and they sent tons of great questions. So hopefully we'll get through all of them. But what do you guys think? Is the obsession with protein on the internet, is it valid?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, asterisks for endurance. I feel like there's always the yes asterisk, right?
There is, yeah.
I do think it's super valid for the athletes that are listening, that are high volume training athletes. I think it's super valid.
I would just add my hot take on the internet obsession with protein. These recipes that I see where it's some usually a strength-based health influencer where they have these recipes that are 3 or 4 ingredients. Usually there's some protein powder added in there. There's massive amounts of protein in this thing that they say tastes like dessert. And I've made a couple of them because I'm just curious. And you guys, they were garbage. Are my taste buds off? Do I just have a high standard of good food? But it tasted awful. It was just garbage. And so I'm just kind of a purist. And it's if I'm going to have dessert, I want dessert. I want really good dessert. And if I'm going to have protein, I'm just going to get it from the foods that are naturally high in protein and not try and concoct some sort of garbage mimic dessert. I don't that's just my hot take.
Just the idea of it's this dessert that has protein powder and cottage cheese tastes exactly like cheesecake. The expectation does not meet reality, and that's what I have an issue with. It's it's not the same. But if you want to eat those things, great, but just don't call it cheesecake.
Yeah. Though, Mary, you have a recipe. I don't think I've posted it on the blog yet. What was it? It had some cottage cheese. I think you blended it in.
Yeah,
what was that recipe?
It's more of a post-workout smoothie, which is a perfect post-workout refueling strategy because this one does have a vanilla protein powder, tart cherries that are frozen, some cottage cheese in there, a liquid milk or milk alternative, ice. And I truly do feel like it has a cheesecake-like vibe. Now, I'm not fooling anybody. I'm not saying it's exactly like cheesecake, and that's not the intention, but it's super tasty nonetheless.
Yeah.
And to your point, Alex, I totally agree with you. If we're going to do dessert, let's do it right and let's do it the right way versus trying to mimic all of these tasty treats and end up killing your taste buds.
Yeah, I just I can't with those recipes. I am a hardcore just roll my eyes. So, okay. So the obsession with protein is valid with an asterisk on that. What changes do we notice personally with our athletes that we coach when they improve their protein intake? I'll just add mine in. I've had this one athlete that I really just loved working with. He's a triathlete. He was short on protein on average 30 grams of protein a day. Like he was just not getting enough. And he trained a ton. And always on the weekends when he did his long workouts, he struggled with a lot of muscle fatigue, first residual from like earlier in the week. And even in that first week of working with him and he started filling in that protein gap, I remember exactly a week later, he was riding on the bike trainer and he was messaging me as he's riding. He's like, oh my God, I haven't felt this great on a long bike ride on a Sunday in so long. He goes, I don't have any muscle fatigue today. This is amazing. And I really feel like him focusing on protein that week and helping with recovery was a huge part of that. So that to me is like one of my main things that I notice from athletes is they just recover better, like muscle fatigue wise. But what do you guys think? What do you notice?
I totally echo that for sure. I see that from an appetite perspective because we do have a lot of athletes that are working on body composition goals. I feel like prioritizing protein, particularly earlier in the day, really helps stabilize blood sugars to help prevent and mitigate cravings that tend to happen for our high level athletes that are training a lot throughout the week. And it also provides satiety. It takes longer to digest. And so it's going to help you feel full for a longer period of time. So you're not hungry every hour on the hour. So
it's exhausting to be hungry all the time.
And people don't have time for that, right?
Yeah.
They don't have time when they're working and parenting and all of the above, training. But to your point, Alex, in terms of optimizing recovery, I would say when athletes start our program, we have them journal for several days. And I would say I seldom have an athlete start with me that's been able to meet their protein target day in and day out, which is fine, right? That's why they're working with us. But when they start to know that optimized recovery, particularly later in the week, they don't experience that cumulative fatigue that they would have otherwise had. It's super empowering. So I would say those are kind of the main ones that I typically see. What about you, Hannah?
Yeah, I would also go along with that and say I also noticed an improvement in mental clarity and stabilizing mood as well. I mean, obviously that, it would make sense if we're seeing a stabilization in blood sugars, that it would impact your mood in a positive way. But just to feel more calm and not feel like you get that like as bad of like a hangry feeling, it's more of like a build of hunger into the meal. I think can just feel as if you have more control around food. It's not like I need food now. It's like you can be more intentional about your choices just because you have that level of just that slow build into the hunger rather than just feeling like you kind of crash and burn. So those are a couple of other things that I've noticed too.
When you're talking, I'm like hangry. They're not hangry. Like their mood is so much better because they're not starving all the time, for 100%. And the reason, honestly, why I wanted to have this discussion today was that someone had messaged me and said, hey, I wondered what your thoughts were on that new research study this year that stated that endurance athletes need more protein than what we originally thought, that it is actually more along the lines of what you would recommend to like a strength-based athlete. And I looked up the study, and I'm going to include the study in our show notes as well so you can check it out. But it was suggested that the daily protein intake for endurance athletes should be around 1.8 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram body weight. And I read it and I was like, I've been calculating at 1.8 grams per kilo like for years. So I'm like, am I ahead of the game, or like what am I missing? Because I've got like a whole stack of like sports nutrition books behind me, and to me, I feel like for the most part they say anywhere from like 1.2 1.5 to 2 grams. There's a pretty wide range. And so for our athletes, I've always tried to get to 1.8. If they are really short, then I might say, hey, let's start with this goal of maybe 1.4, 1.5, and then work our way up to 1.8. It's really hard to make a huge jump on a consistent basis. But yeah, like, what do you guys think? Like, are we just ahead of the game, or like, I just didn't find this research super revolutionary from my standpoint.
I would agree. I would say that since starting working with clients, I've always done that 1.8 is kind of like my standard baseline. If there are special considerations, right? So if somebody's wanting to put on lean mass, or they're injured, or working through some kind of injury, or we're in a body comp phase, like we're really focusing on that deficit, I do push to 2 grams of protein per kilogram. My kind of standard baseline is 1.8. I very rarely go below that.
Yeah.
Unless again, it kind of depends on where the person is starting from too. So let's say their average protein intake is like 50 grams a day. I'm not going to say, okay, we got to get to 150 by tomorrow. That's just like too much to like figuratively even digest, right? Even just like mentally, the mental load of that. So sometimes I just like stepwise it up in a way that they feel comfortable, even if it's not that 1.8, but my standard is usually 1.8.
I absolutely agree with that strategy, Hannah, because especially for some of these larger male cyclists, don't take that personally when I say that. But I mean, if you're taking your weight in pounds divided by 2.2, that's your weight in kilos, time multiplying that by 1.8. I mean, there's a good chance some of these men need to be hitting close to 200 grams of protein per day. And if
Right.
they're starting the program and they're averaging closer to 100, I have this actually quite recently with an athlete. I mean, our initial goal is probably going to be 130 grams, which is not close to 200 grams. But if we were to start with 200 grams per day as our initial goal, there's a very good chance you're going to be experiencing some digestive issues, perhaps bloating, constipation, or diarrhea, or some ill effects that aren't going to go super well. So, yeah, I mean, Alex, I don't think this research is revolutionary, but I do think that it's good to gauge kind of where you're starting from to know where exactly do we need to be headed.
Yeah. I do also find that when athletes start increasing their protein intake, their fat intake will increase quite significantly too. And then if we're working on body comp and we don't want calories to be at a surplus, then we need to be really mindful of where we're getting that protein and choosing some leaner options so that we can keep calories in check, because we don't want to cut carbs for sure. So there has to be, I think, a definite balance in not just looking at protein, we're looking at the whole athlete and what works well for them to get in consistently in an easy enough way for their lifestyle. And then how can we also still fuel their training really well? Like there's lots of things that we look at, but absolutely, I think looking around that 1.8 grams of protein per kilo is great. I did have someone on Instagram ask, they're like, is 1.2 grams per kilo sufficient? And I'm like, to me, I was like, that's the really, really low end of the range. We would definitely want someone to try and get more than that. But if right now that's the only thing that they can get in, sufficient, yes, but there's definitely room for optimization there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say the only people I really see that with is a lot of like my vegetarian or vegan clients, where it's like, or for people who are like, I'm following that lifestyle and I also do not want to do a protein powder. I'm like, okay, baseline it. Very minimum, we want to do 1.2. So for those specific populations, I sometimes see that. And we can get around that for sure. But that's just a place where we're kind of like trying to maybe maintain rather than those special circumstances we just talked about, like recovery or building lean mass or something. A little more challenging to do that with 1.2.
Yeah, 100%. How about protein source? How much does that matter for recovery? And this again was an Instagram question, and they gave an example of like whey protein versus casein protein.
Yeah, so source does matter, again, with an asterisk. Or an asterisk. So really, it just kind of depends on the overall goal. And again, some of this can get lost in the nuance too. Like these are really like nitty gritty fine details. So this would be something as if you've already established a really good solid foundation, you're consistently getting your protein, that's most important. Now, once you've established that and you want to kind of like up level, I would say what you could consider is like for like really quick recovery, like directly post workout, whey protein is typically going to be your best bet. For more sustained, longer term support, I do suggest casein like right before bed. It's great. It's slow releasing. It's great for blood sugar regulation. An awesome opportunity to have that like cottage cheese, like protein shake, like right before bed. If somebody's like lactose intolerant, that's where I would suggest whey over casein. Whey protein does have less lactose, so that would be a better option for people who are.
And I would add specifically though whey protein isolate.
Whey isolate.
You want to make you want it to be isolate because that's the most pure form. If you look at a label that says whey protein concentrate, then it's going to have a little bit less purity of whey, and you're going to have a little bit more lactose in there too. So if you are lactose intolerant, just make sure you're checking the label for whey protein isolate.
Correct. Yeah. So those are kind of my two bigger ones really, is really like what's the goal of the protein? And then are you lactose intolerant? And then also just even above those, I should have worked backwards here, is just focus on your protein first and foremost. And then once you've established that, then you can kind of go down the road of like specificity.
Yeah. And with protein, like with whey, what's nice about whey is it has a very high leucine content, and leucine is a branched chain amino acid that is actually known as like the trigger. It signals the body to actually build more muscle. And so if you hear people talking about branched chain amino acids and why they're important, that's why, is because specifically leucine is kind of that trigger amino acid. That being said, you don't have to necessarily do a whey protein isolate powder. You can certainly get plenty of branched chain amino acids through your food. You don't have to look and buy just branched chain amino acids. To me, I feel like BCAAs are just a waste of money. I'd rather just do a protein powder. It tastes better. It's a little bit cheaper, or just get it through food alone, is my thoughts on that.
For sure.
Yeah. And then with like plant-based protein powders, I tend to like them if they've got a blend of plant-based sources in there, then you're getting a little bit better amino acid profile.
And most
if
of
I'm
them
looking
are
at the
a
source.
blend.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even in general, with your diet, it's good to get a variety of different protein sources. If you're omnivore and you're getting a variety of different meats, a variety of different even plant-based sources, dairy, eggs, all of that, you're going to get so much additional nutrition with that protein, which is going to be just an extra added bonus on. You don't have to get it just from cottage cheese and rotisserie chicken and like I do all the time.
You'd be okay.
I know. I do eat a lot of rotisserie chicken, but I also do a lot of smoked salmon. We eat ground beef a lot. Like, I try and get enough variety, but then I do also supplement with Costco rotisserie chicken. And last night
Alex, we know your sweat smells like Costco.
I know. Well, and then last night, my husband swung by Costco and got me a fresh chicken. And so that I did actually go the extra step, and I used the bones to make like a bone broth in my Instant Pot. I just
Reed knows the way to your heart. Look at
I know. He's like, hey, I'm up by Costco. Do you need a chicken? I know, like,
chicken.
It's true. That's all I need in life is him, because it's like a 25-minute drive to Costco. So it was just, I felt extra special that I actually made some bone broth from the leftover bones. And so I'm going to hopefully make like some ramen, or since I've got a sick family here, I might do just like some noodle broth, like bone broth soup for them this afternoon.
Alex, I got to say, that's very pioneer woman of you. I mean, to make your own bone broth seems like very...
I know. I'm feeling pretty proud of myself right now, because that's not usually how I roll.
Right? You mentioned you're a sick kid.
I know, we've got some sort of stomach bug coming through the house, so I'm desperate measures here. And it was so easy to like throw it in the Instant Pot, because you only have to cook it for like 2 hours, versus like to make an actual true bone broth, it's like 12 hours on the stove. So the pressure cooker definitely sped things up. And so, yeah, I've just got to like skim the fat off now that it's sitting in the garage fridge with the birthday cake that's also in there. This is my life. It's chaos. Hey, bone broth and a birthday cake in our garage fridge. Okay, so next question is, can you eat too much protein? And Mary, you mentioned that most of your athletes come in and they're short on protein. I have had a couple where I'm like, whoa, you don't need to be eating like 170 grams. You really only need like 130, 135. So I have certainly said we can back off on the protein, and people are so excited.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of work to eat that much. And I'm like, yeah, we can back off on that. You actually are a little short on carbs. So let's make that swap. It doesn't happen a lot, but I have certainly had those situations where they're just like going way overboard.
Yeah. And actually, I've had that when I've been working with athletes, is because then we work together on increasing their protein, and they want to, knock our socks off, of course. And I've had to have athletes scale back a bit, because if you're going that far over your protein target, there's a really good chance you're not meeting your carb needs to support your training. And also you're not optimizing healthy fat sources, which are also important in diet. So yes, protein is absolutely important, but we need to remember so are the other macronutrients, which are carbohydrates and also dietary fat sources. If athletes are going way over their protein needs, I've seen it a few times also result in GI issues, which I've alluded to. The most often constipation, bloating, maybe dehydration, because when you're eating more protein, you have more nitrogen waste and more urine output. And if you're not staying well hydrated, that can lead to dehydration, of course. And Alex, as you alluded to before, if you're not choosing lean sources of protein most often, there's a very good chance that long term that may negatively affect heart health if you're choosing more fatty cuts of meat specifically.
Yeah. And I've heard from athletes that have said, really, I'm working on my protein and my weight has like gone up 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds. And I'm like, okay, if they're not an athlete, then I'm like, I don't know for sure what's going on. But I was like, my suspicion is that fat intake, especially if they're doing like peanut butter, where they like think protein, peanut butter, and then they're like,
okay,
eating like an.
Let's take a moment to pause here. And this, okay, so when I work with athletes, normally I allow them 3 tantrums during our time together. So they can like just let it out. They can throw their 3 tantrums. And after their 3 are over, if they throw more tantrums, I remind them you get 3 tantrums. Okay. But athletes normally throw a tantrum because I remind them peanut butter and cheese are not good protein sources.
They have protein in them, but like to me they're like a fat source.
Absolutely, especially peanut butter. And that's hard for me to say because I absolutely love peanut butter. I
and
also
cheese.
really like cheese.
Yes.
And I would probably eat them together, but that is not a good lean protein source. So all of our listeners, they can get annoyed with me. They can throw their tantrum now. I won't take it personal, but
and we're not saying that they can't have it. I think we just need to be very mindful of like frequency and portion size. And with peanut butter, like I have had athletes who just love peanut butter, or like they love peanut butter like in a shake. I'm like, let's buy some like powdered peanut butter. It's like half the fat content. You're still going to get that peanut butter flavor, but it's easy to add that to a smoothie. It's actually easier to add it than like the peanut butter paste. So there's some things that we can like work around, but if they're like really obsessed with peanut butter, I'm like, yeah. And when they journal, they see it and they're like, oh, I didn't realize like how many calories it was adding. So it just takes a little awareness and practice to still include it in your day, but not have it go overboard.
Awareness. I love that word. So insightful. And it's the eggs too. You know, the eggs are fabulous, but it's always like, okay, the athlete's loading on avocado and glopping on the cheese and they're having it with buttery toast. And I mean, at face value, that could be a very well-balanced meal. But when you look at the fat intake, it ends up being cumulatively more fat than protein.
Next question is, if you had to give endurance athletes one simple protein rule of thumb to start with, what would it be?
Okay. Well, there's many different ways that we can start with this, but I would say start your day with protein. That's automatically going to set up how the rest of your day goes. And actually, this was just reminded to me this past weekend. We were traveling for one of my husband's races. He did Check 40, which is a mountain bike race, part of the Lifetime series. Schwamingen. Yep. Which people look at it and it's like, Twakamagwan.
I can never spell it, but I can say it.
I know. That's why we just say Check 40. It's easier. And so we were leaving town on that Sunday. We stopped at a coffee shop and there was these like beautiful like scones. And I had a scone and a coffee was as my first meal of the day. And you guys, I felt like deranged the rest of the day because my blood sugars were like a roller coaster. I mean, it was like, I'm so used to starting my day with protein. And I felt like a basket case. Like my anxiety was higher. I felt starving. I had like, okay, not only did I have a scone for breakfast, but I had leftover pie as part of lunch. And I'm kind of like, why am I doing this? And I just felt outside of myself.
You need that anchor meal of protein. It really sets you up.
Yes, you do. It does. And it makes you like, it sets you up for better choices for the rest of the day.
Because a dietitian intervention.
I do. You guys, that first meal is like a gateway drug to how the rest of the day goes. Because if I'm starting my day with protein, you're already encouraged. You're like, all right, I'm on the protein train. I'm ready to go. Whereas I started my day with a scone. And so I was like, all right, we're hitting the sugar all day long. So that's my biggest pro tip. And I know this kind of leads into, Mary, I already know what you're going to say about what like pro tips that you have. Find a way to do it. That's easy, that's sustainable, and that you enjoy. Like for me, I always do overnight oats. It's my favorite way to start the day. I love oats with Greek yogurt. Sometimes I throw protein powder in there. Sometimes I don't. And then I always put like some kind of berry on the top. Just an awesome way for me to start the day with around 30 grams of protein and a ton of fiber because I've got oats and berries like that, and chia seeds I'll usually throw in there too. It's like my favorite way to start the day.
Hannah took the words right out of my mouth. I echo everything that she just said. I would say for athletes, we typically make a list. We make a tangible list that we're revisiting very often of what protein-rich foods that are lean do you truly enjoy? What are easy, what are convenient options that you truly enjoy versus force-feeding yourself fake cheesecake, whatever concoction that the internet is showing you. And let's work with that. And then from your list, you're going to want to include a lean protein with every meal and snack. The only time that's not as important is right before your workout. But it doesn't need to be overwhelmingly complex beyond that. I'd say for most athletes, that's where we're starting.
I will say, since interviewing Dr. Abby, that was earlier on in this season on perimenopause and metabolism, when she recommended taking a little bit of protein before workouts, for me, especially if I'm doing a long ride, like where it's kind of like all my entire morning, I will usually have breakfast and I'll have my typical smoked salmon bagel. It's probably like 20 grams of protein or so. And I usually have a little bit of time by the time I eat and the time I start that ride. It does kind of help me get enough protein that day since I'm almost like missing a meal because I'm out riding for 3-4 hours. So I have started doing that recently and I kind of like it. If I were doing a long run, I probably would have less protein just because that jostling motion tends to cause more gut issues. But the bike is the buffet. You can usually tolerate things a little bit more.
All our cyclists are so lucky. So lucky.
Seriously.
That's why you need to come join me on the gravel here, Mary. Stop running.
I know.
It's just like less GI issues you have to worry about. So that I think is one of my like most recent like rules of thumb is like if you're struggling with getting enough protein because of the training volume you're doing, you can actually add a little bit of protein before your workout. If you give it enough time to digest, it just kind of helps you hit that target when you've got a lot of training going on. Okay. I feel like we've already kind of answered this question in terms of our go-to suggestions for athletes to get more protein in, but let's talk more about the plant-based athletes. What do they need to know? What's the best plant-based protein options for them? And I think too, even if you eat meat, I think plant-based protein options are a great option to also include in there.
I do too, because there's so many other good redeeming qualities about those foods, rich in fiber, good micronutrient profile. I would say the optimal plant-based protein sources, tofu, tempeh, seitan. I always jokingly say not to be confused with Satan. Bad joke. Such a bad joke.
I liked it.
To a lesser degree, beans, lentils, edamame.
Edamame is my go-to for a lot of my athletes.
I love it. It's so good.
Even my omnivore athletes, I'm like, let's add some edamame because it's like really, it's great fiber too. Yes. It's such a good option.
So good.
One of our just MVP athletes is a physician, and she hands out dried edamame to her patients.
That is awesome.
It's great.
I love that.
But I would say for plant-based athletes, I seldom see plant-based athletes that are able to consistently meet their protein needs. And when I say consistently, I mean, most day in, most day out. I mean, there's probably one-offs where they can definitely hit protein needs, but most days of the week, you probably need a protein powder or a protein supplement to hit that.
Yeah.
The 1.8 grams per kilo body weight, that is.
I haven't seen a single plant-based athlete that hasn't had to use a protein powder in order to hit their protein targets. It's just really hard. And I know someone else had even asked on Instagram, like, how do you cram in so much and not feel super full all the time on like a vegetarian-based diet? Like, it's hard because it's just a lot of volume of food to get enough to eat.
Right.
What about the protein digestibility corrected amino acid score? It's a big, long acronym, PDCAAS. It's a score that measures protein quality that takes into account both like the digestibility of the protein and the amino acid composition. Like, is that something that plant-based athletes should worry about?
It's very similar to what the glycemic index supports in the sense that it's helpful to know, but it really doesn't provide the full picture. So like the glycemic will say like that how it might increase your blood sugars just of one specific food, but it doesn't oftentimes complement it. There's not a lot of people that just eat sweet potatoes or just eat rice or just eat a bunch of fruit at one time. That does happen in a carb load, for instance, but the PDC AAS, it's certainly not additive. So the score is for an individual food, but doesn't take into account like complementary amino acid profiles of different foods eaten together, like pea protein with rice protein, which is the combination that you'll typically see in a vegan protein powder. There are those that do have just pea protein or just rice, but oftentimes they have both, so it's a bigger and fuller amino acid profile. So really, when looking at that, it's not looking at how you're combining food, it's just looking at one individual food that would indicate whether or not it's supportive to your protein goals or not.
Yeah. I have seen, and I couldn't find the study, I was trying to look for it, but I've seen somewhere there is a study that showed that because of the fiber quantity of a lot of these plant-based foods, that there was this theory that our body wasn't like fully breaking down and able to get all of the protein from plant-based protein sources. So therefore athletes were having to eat like 20, 30, 40% more protein in order to get enough. I think there's some validity there, but again, that's really challenging to get all of that protein in. So, I mean, at that point, I'm like, okay, let's just try and get you as much as is feasible for you, and kind of go from there. I feel like we've answered this, but protein powders, yay or nay? I'm a yay, as long as it's NSF certified for sport or informed choice for sport. Thorne is usually my go-to brand. I'll include a affiliate link for 15% off in the show notes, because I really like the quality of their products. Their whey protein isolate, especially the chocolate flavor, is my favorite. I have it every single day. And Mary, you didn't believe me when I told you that when I blend it with Fairlife chocolate milk and ice, it tastes like a Wendy's Frosty. And then you sent me a picture after trying it, and you agreed that it tasted just like that Wendy's chocolate shake Frosty.
And at the time, I think my youngest daughter, who was 5 at the time, we were doing taste testing for don't we have the Recovery Drink Mix blog article? And Lainey and I were doing taste tests.
Yeah.
We'll have to post that blog article as well.
Yes.
But yeah, that one is very good. There's a lot of good high quality protein powders out there.
Yeah, I will say the recovery mixes like that some of the major like sports fuel brands do, where it's got some protein in there. So I've tried almost all of them. I'm just not a fan of them, like personally, taste wise. I know some people rave about them and love them, and I'm happy for them. But like for me, I just go for the real food or a protein shake personally if I need like some post workout recovery protein.
Yeah, and they're so expensive per serving.
Yes, they are.
Like, okay, they're
very expensive.
Like, a banana and some Greek yogurt.
Yeah. Like I'm not like, when people are like, which one should I use? And I'm like, you don't have to use them. And they're like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, you don't. Like,
food first, always is our
food first if you can. It just tastes better. You're going to get so much more from it. It's hard though. When you're post workout and you have no appetite, then drinking like a protein shake or something that way certainly is a good option. Or if you're traveling and you really do enjoy the taste and flavor of those mixes, go for it. But you don't have to. We're not sitting here saying you have to. It's 100% optional, like anything. Is there any long-term risks associated with relying too much on supplemental protein? Yeah, like a protein powder. I haven't seen anything other than the only thing that came to mind was like behavioral changes. People are relying on supplemental protein as one of their only ways to get enough, and they're not practicing those good eating behaviors of getting in food. I feel like that's the longest term risk of that, is that you don't actually build those skills of learning how to eat well
and putting a well-balanced meal together. And fortunately, again, with our foods, we all take the approach of, if you can optimize foods first approach here. I don't see that.
Yeah.
Especially if you're looking at like a high quality product, which thankfully these products have come a long way, where, as you mentioned, they're third party tested, they're quality assured, they're not filled with artificial sweeteners, which I'm okay with occasionally. But if that's something you're doing multiple servings of in one day, I think we'd probably want to look at habits a little bit more rather than relying on something we don't know the long-term risk of some of that stuff.
Yeah. Especially if you're having unwanted side effects. And most often for runners that I work with, it's GI issues for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Downside to drinking your protein versus eating it.
Typically what I see is they're not as sustained. They don't have that satiety there, and they are foraging for food about 45 minutes later.
Yeah.
And so even if I have athletes that are wanting to use a protein powder post-workout, I will absolutely support that. But most of the time, if we can somehow bulk that up, like we were talking about before, add some cottage cheese with that smoothie, some tart cherries, some frozen fruit, banana, a little bit of ground oats, flaxseed, chia seed. I mean, the nice thing about smoothies and protein powders is they're so versatile.
Yeah, if that's going to be your main meal. Sometimes I'll say, yeah, have that protein shake, but then let's have a meal within hour and a half.
Not to mention the GI like impact of that too, because if you're downing like 500 calories in a shake, which you could bulk it up to within 5 minutes,
and it's not filling you up.
Yeah, like that's going to cause some bloat. That's going to cause some distension. That's going to cause some gas, potentially some cramping, especially if you're pounding that down in a dehydrated gut and then you're putting a ton of protein in and sucking that down within 5 minutes. You can expect that to not sit well. So that's another consideration I'd look at too.
Downside of adding protein powder to your morning oatmeal. I can never get it to not like gelatinize. And so like I'm team nay on the protein powder in the oatmeal. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, I want to like it. I think Hannah mentioned the overnight oats, and you can eat it cold, and it's wonderful. When I've done it with warm oats, it turns into cement, like actual cement, where you can't stir it.
Yeah, I just think that there's certain things that were not meant to be heated. There's two things that come specifically to mind. One is protein powder. You should just not heat it. The other one is almond milk. Like, just don't heat it. It just is going to taste bad.
I will say, like, Kodiak Cakes oatmeal has like a protein powder in it. That their texture is good.
They have figured it out. I will say that that's a good one. I'm wondering, like, because it's not that much protein though, right? And there's protein from other sources in the Kodiak Cakes, like with like oats and the chia or whatever. I'm wondering if this really is like a dose truly makes the poison in this situation. But I would say just don't heat the powder. Just if you're going to do it, like do an overnight oat.
Yeah, and don't do like the full serving of protein in there. I would do like more like 8 to 10 grams, which I think is what Kodiak does.
It is. But it's 12 grams in a little packet.
Whatever toots your horn too, because I do have a few athletes that like it, and if they like it, I will absolutely support that.
I've never had good luck with it. Okay, next one. It's the end of the day, dinner is done, and you're still short on protein. Any suggestions?
I think you need to plan better.
Honestly, I was going to say it.
My question was like, are you still hungry? Are you not hungry? Because I'm like, if you're not hungry, then like don't force yourself to eat it just to hit your protein goals. I think sometimes when athletes come in, they're like, oh, just give me my macros. I really need to figure out my macros. And I'm like, okay, I don't want this to be macro tracking where you're eating really weird shit at random times of the day in order for you to meet your macros. I want you to like eat to meet your needs in a way that feels natural and works for your lifestyle. So like if you're at the end of the day and you're short on protein, you're not hungry, you're full and satisfied, like don't force it down just to meet your protein needs, but also let's maybe plan better so that you can get that protein in and be done with it at dinner. Or if you have to have a bedtime snack because you're hungry, then we can fill it in with something there.
And with a couple of athletes, we've taken the approach of maybe pre-logging a day or two in advance, just so they get a better idea of, okay, if your protein target's 140 grams, what exactly does that look like?
I love a little entering of the journal. If people have an idea of what they're going to eat, they can kind of figure out what their day will look like, and then see how it feels. You know what I mean? Like have a plan, see how it feels, and we can always tweak moving forward.
Like let's say that athlete like is starving and they do have protein, then know you like your singular macro foods, right? Like if you know that you need protein, like what is a protein that's going to give you like not a bunch of fat, not a lot of carbs. So it's like, all right, you're going to have Greek yogurt. You're going to have cottage cheese. You're going to have protein powder. Like that's kind of it, right? So it's like, know what your choices might be if you are hungry and you have protein, kind of like what strategy you'd have to take. But first and foremost, plan.
Sometimes for me, I'm just like, I'm going to just drink a glass of like Fairlife chocolate milk because it's delicious. It tastes kind of like dessert. And it's like, 13 grams of protein per cup. There's a little bit of carbs in there, just like small amount of fat. Like to me, that's like my dream, like quick and easy snack at the end of the day, where if I'm like, oh, I just feel like I need something, I'll just have a glass of that. All right, ladies, thank you so much for this. This was really fun. Yeah, hopefully and for those listening, if you have more protein questions, please let us know. We can always add it to a future episode. Always a pleasure, ladies. You guys are the best. I have the best team in the whole world. I feel so lucky. I can't tell you guys this all the time, but I feel like I hit the lottery just getting you both into my life and in my business.
We feel the same.
All right, ladies. Until next time. Thanks for joining us. I hope this gave you more clarity and practical ideas on protein. And if you found this episode helpful, share it with your training partner who could use a protein upgrade and on your social channels. And if you're ready for more personalized support, you can always connect with me to learn more about our one-on-one nutrition coaching program. Links are in the show notes. Keep fueling smart, and I'll see you in the next episode.